All right. So the first thing I just wanted to ask you was, what made you want to become an engineer?
Um, well, that all kind of started when I was younger. I was in a band, and we were doing our own recordings, and it was real primitive. We had like an 8-channel mixer that would go like this is a live mixer
Mm-hmm.
that had like built-in effects and things that went straight into a line 6 single channel interface
Yeah.
that usually people use for like recording guitar on pre-made
Mm-hmm.
tracks. And so we would have to get all our levels mixed on the mixer first and then go into a single channel that's never going to get changed after that. Just a mono channel. So our drums were all mono, our guitars were all mono. We just pan them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of learning that at a young age. I was like 15,
Yeah.
maybe 14. That was fun. So that kind of got me started.
Yeah. So there's like no width, no depth to the recording.
Oh, no.
It was just straight mono.
And I still have them from like the old bands we were in. And, some of them were okay. Some of them were total crap,
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of cool to just see what we were doing at the time because it was, the bare minimum.
Yeah.
We didn't have any money either.
Yeah.
I was surprised we had those things.
So I mean, it's better than nothing.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like capturing that time, that moment, and it's just like with what you could do.
And I was pretty fortunate before that. I was in a band since I was 13, and those just kind of changed all throughout junior high and high school. And the first time I ever recorded, we actually had, saved up and paid someone. I was 8th grade. Picture that. You're in 8th grade, you're going to a studio, which was some guy's garage,
Yeah.
who was using Pro Tools. And I had this big double bass drum set,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, an engineer's nightmare, really,
Yeah.
And I showed up to this guy's house who was, probably at a pretty beginning level,
Yeah.
and he saw what was going on and just said, shit, all right. We spent the whole day there, and I kind of got to see the process of what he would do to make things sound the way they did.
Mm-hmm.
And that also kind of got me hooked, too. So when we finally got our own stuff and did it a little more guerrilla style,
Mm-hmm.
I already had a little insight on what we'd be doing. And then after that, it gave me a real hands-on, somewhat of an experience that says, okay, this is what we need to do now.
Yeah. And what would you do to like learn more? Was it just trial and error, or would you go to books, YouTube?
That's a good, yeah. Usually I would go on websites and just read through articles and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
As I got older, I discovered the magazine Tape Op, and I know I've told you about that one before. It's
Yeah.
super engineer friendly, producer friendly. Everything is kind of how we would be talking to each other about music.
Mm-hmm.
The questions that they're asking these engineers, producers, sometimes just musicians that dabble in both. The questions are real in-depth, experience-based questions, and it's fun. It's kind of fun to read and see different perspectives and things like that. So that was a big learning tool for me.
Mm-hmm. So it's like that engineer handbook.
Yeah, you know what? And
Book.
the Bob Ozinski handbook. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but the mixing engineer's handbook, the mastering engineer's handbook. Those are both really good reads that
Mm-hmm.
kind of kick-started me wanting to read more about the stuff.
Yeah.
But in general, I just like reading. I'll watch videos too; those are fun. But I always feel like I can stop in a book or an article and come back to it at the same part, and still kind of just retain the information a little better. I don't know why.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's cool.
that's just me.
And who would you look into, like when you think of when you were learning yourself, when you're like, all right, this engineer is good. Let me hear what he's doing, or how does he do what he does?
Well,
Like techniques.
that's funny because back when I was first starting, I wasn't looking into who engineered the tracks. I was looking more into which bands or groups I thought had good recordings,
Mm-hmm.
and just using them as reference, like most people do, and never looking at the credits. I didn't start looking at the credits until I was, in my 20s, and I realized, holy crap, this will lead me down another rabbit hole that'll give me this guy's whole catalog of work.
Yeah.
And then you can see how they've progressed over the years. You listen to their old recordings of different groups or artists,
Yeah.
and then you just see the progression, and it's kind of cool to to be able to see that and realize that, okay, I'm kind of taking that path too, starting slow, getting better.
Yeah.
You know?
It has to be, because like when you start, you only have limited equipment. You have what you have and what you know, and it's just like
most of the time, right?
You want to do this, but you don't know where to start. So
yeah.
You just got to go find it or trial and error.
And it seems like back, you know, when the music and recording business was a lot different, you know, just from reading like the historical books on guys that have been recording since the 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
And, you know, the way that they got placed was they would kind of either intern or just know someone that worked at the studio and hung around. And then now, hey, do you want a job? Cool. You're going to learn how to work this board. And it's an expensive $100-something-thousand board with all the bells and whistles around. You know, that experience, while it still can happen today, it just isn't the common experience that I think everyone else deals with. More like us, starting out at home, learning on the bare essentials, and then gaining more tools, and then finally getting more knowledge.
So you have to hustle it, because where we're at, there is no studio.
Exactly.
Like it's either home studio, garage, or what you built.
Right, and even this is a small. This might as well be called a home studio, you know. And it's kind of what it feels like. It's like my home away from home, really.
I think, like, if I'm being honest, I think that's the best route, because now you're forced to learn everything. Like you have to learn. I need to put this sound panel on because it's gonna do this. If you're at a studio, it's like, oh well, the room's already like that. And
it's been designed by someone who knows, you know, that gets paid to design rooms and things like that. When you're doing it like this, you have to become the room designer. If you're building everything yourself, you're now the contractor.
Yeah.
You know, and once it comes into even routing the system, you know, a lot of people might have other companies or professionals come in to do that. No, you kind of got to learn it all. You know?
That's true. And how'd you start your home studio? Like with the equipment you had and just built it?
Oh, so I think the first thing I bought, it was like a couple of years worth of birthday and Christmas money. And I was 17, maybe 18, and I got a M Audio Fast Track, the one channel, you know, had one XLR and one 1/4 inch input. And it had a version of Pro Tools M-powered. It would only work with M Audio, you know, interfaces. It was limited, but it was where I started, and that was kind of cool. You know, I had a Shure PG-27 condenser microphone. The interface had phantom power, so that was good. And I remember that combo, I felt like, oh my God, my recordings are amazing now, you know?
Yeah.
When I jumped from going to like the handheld dynamic microphones like this into a Line 6 interface, you know, and now I got a condenser mic with phantom power and a good, well, you know, I thought it was the best interface at the time. But yeah, now, you know, things are a little bit different, but, you know, the idea is still the same, you know? Good microphones, good preamps, good system. It's real similar still.
And was it like that urge to want to get better that you started looking into like sound panels and different mics, different equipment?
You know, the more you see pictures and videos and read about the way certain guys are doing certain things, you realize, well, their recordings sound good and this is what they're doing. Maybe I should try that, you know? Maybe they're onto something. At first, you know, when you don't know anything about designing a room or even just how sound panels work and how the different materials, you know, respond to the room, when you don't know any of that stuff, you just kind of see it and then think, oh, maybe I should look into that, you know? I remember the first time I saw one of those diffusers that I think they're linear diffusers or something. It's all wood. Panels are different lengths. I know I have a couple of them built in the other room. The first time I saw one of those, I just thought, wow, that's a really cool piece of art. You know, that's what it looked like. It was in the back of someone's control room right up here. And I thought, wow, that's super cool. Never thought anything else of it until I started seeing them as giant movable panels in bigger studios. They'd move them around and put different instruments or vocalists or anything in front of them. And then I thought, okay, now I got to look into what these do. And then, you know, you start seeing the the comparisons, the even the charts, for the frequencies that they kind of diffuse, and you start making informed decisions based off of that.
And what were some of the first plugins you started with? Like just straight Pro Tools stock plugins? Stock plugins,
yeah. And even to this day, I use stock plugins all the time. If you can learn to use them well, that's 90% of the goal. Different plugins always impart their own sound, obviously. The ones that emulate the old hardware machines, those are great. I have a couple of those that I really like.
Yeah.
But I still use the Pro Tools Air EQ, or their Deverb sometimes too. It all just depends on what I'm using it for.
Yeah, because I've seen videos where it'll be like a professional top Billboard song, and they use like a stock Pro Tools reverb. And I'm just like, bro, at the end of the day, it's how you use it.
That's exactly right.
It's knowing what a compressor does. It's knowing what an EQ does. The different types of EQs, different types of compressors, and why you want to use that one.
Exactly. And to be honest, I keep my plugins folder pretty minimal. It's nice to have all the options, but if I'm just stuck searching through options for hours, it's not going to help me any. If I have a couple go-tos that I know how to work really well, then I'm going to be able to get through the project quicker and with a little bit more accuracy because I already know how things are going to respond.
Yeah.
I have 2 or 3 compressors I use a lot, 2 or 3 reverbs that I use pretty often. Only like 1 or 2 delays that I grab most of the time, and one of them is the stock delay from Pro Tools. Yeah, and I love that thing.
That's how I was when I first got into engineering. I wanted every plugin. I would search free plugins, best plugins. I invested. I bought the Wave plugins, and then I'm like, bro, I don't even use half of these.
Exactly.
I just use 10 at the most. You know?
And it's even more so if you start looking into the producing side of things when you're making a beat or even just adding texture to a song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Got a billion free plugins so I could have all these cool sounds. And I'd spend an hour or two just searching through sounds. Well, that didn't help me do anything. What helped me was when I started learning how to shape waveforms and things like that, or build your own synth tone. It was way easier when I just was able to tweak it until I knew what I was getting was what I wanted. But we all go through that. We all want the most of everything.
And what are some of your go-to plugins?
Oh, I love the Slate plugins. Those are definitely my favorite. But lately I've been using a Waves multiband compressor and just kind of using it on different things here and there, like snare drum sounding thin. I'll use it on that to bump up the lower frequencies, but also limit them, essentially. If you smash down that frequency enough, I shouldn't say smash, but if you put it down enough, bring the threshold down enough, and then bring up the makeup gain, it kind of keeps that constant punch while not spiking all the time, because low-end management on these tracks, or any track really, it's a chore. You got to kind of know what you're doing, or at least try it enough times until it sounds right. And that plugin, I forget which one it is, but it's one of their multi-band compressors.
C4?
No, I think it's their linear multi-band compressor, and it's working out really well, just for real subtle glue and things like drums, vocals, mastering. It works really well.
That happens to me when I download, for example, a rapper wants a YouTube beat, download it, throw it in Logic, and it's that low and just takes up all the headroom, everything. I'm like, bro,
I know. And I get why they do that, because they want it to sound as good as it can when people first pop it on YouTube and this is slumping,
And everything's just compressed, everything's just glued together.
But it's not usually prepared for a recording, There's
no dynamics.
That's why you got to get stems.
Yeah, that's true.
And I always encourage, the artists that are going to put it out and make a big deal about it. Yes, let's get stems. But if they're just looking to put out music because they want to just keep things flowing, and they don't want to go super heavy into the mixing and mastering. Some people like it more raw. And then, yeah, we can just go with the wave, the single file wave, the stereo, and work with that, because you can still kind of cut out frequencies, add frequencies, at least to a certain extent, to let the vocals sit over things better, or get more headroom. Everything's going to be a little bit backwards from how you would work it as a stem, but you can still make it work.
Yeah. Because I've even ran into things where loudness, perceivedness, where having a high low end doesn't necessarily perceive it as, people think it makes it seem good,
right?
But in reality it doesn't.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you can, around here there's a lot of cars with systems, right? Even mine, I got a subwoofer in mine, and it really skews my mixing. So I have to kind of try a couple cars, a couple different speakers and things like that to really get a gauge on where the low end is. And meters as well help, all the different analyzers and whatnot, but in the end it's it's always going to be needed to be turned down more than I pictured. That's almost always the case. I feel like I got it set up nice. I go put it in a car, different speakers, and start to realize, oh wow, this is really bassy. Let's fix that. The bass and the treble, I always overdo those the first round of mixing. And I always end up taming them both back down until it gets a little bit more easy to listen to,
Yeah. When you mix, do you usually go first mix, you're done, or do you come back and check it?
Oh no, I do several drafts, and I usually save them as different drafts. So like if I work on it this day, I'll save it as that day, and then I open it up again on 5 days later. I save it immediately as a new session with that date, so I can always go back to my steps. Know where I was at, know what I was kind of thinking. And if you make a change on a session that you really you screwed it up and you don't like it, go back to the old one. You got it from 5 days ago.
Yeah.
So
that's smart.
Things like that will help.
So when you started your home studio, how'd you start getting clients or start making money?
Well, yeah. So when it was first starting and I was just using the interface and the little single channel interface with that microphone I was mentioning, I was starting, actually I think it might have been my senior year in high school, and then going to the community college in town right after. So it was kind of in that area. It was usually people from school, whether it was high school or the college, classmates that would either want to be recording a verse for rap, or they want to lay down a song because they're a songwriter on guitar and things like that. That's how it kind of started. And then I got more friends that were into making their own music, bands, groups, single artists, things like that. And it was kind of more word of mouth than anything.
Yeah.
I tried posting and things on Instagram, which is a very powerful tool. I'm just not very good at it. And I still, I wasn't, and I still am not very good at it. So most of my clients, even today, are word of mouth. Yeah. And when you have a good enough portfolio that you can pull from to show different genres, it makes a big difference, because when someone comes in here, you never know if they have a friend who's into the same type of music, different type of music, or if they want to do a podcast. I record podcasts and voiceovers too.
Yeah.
And it's always a different experience, but that's kind of how it all started. It was just people talking,
And were you recording for free at first?
Oh yeah, at first I was just trying to get better, and then after a while it'd be like, hey, $20. After I started spending a little bit more money and time on whether it was the projects or the hardware, I started to charge a little. And then as I got better and I could realize that my recordings were getting good, they were at least more comparable to what you'd be hearing, whether it was on the radio, TV, anything. I was like, okay, maybe I should start charging a little more. And then every time you get better, and get more equipment, you feel the need to charge more. And then eventually you work your way into your own place. You work your way into your own workflow with your own hardware and things like that. Because there was plenty of times where I'd borrow equipment too. you know.
Okay.
I think even now the kick drum mic that I use is still a borrowed kick drum mic, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's on a long-term loan essentially. The buddy doesn't use it anymore, but
Yeah.
I've gotten a ton of use from it, you know. So
Mhm.
you can also start out that way, especially having friends that are into the same thing. If you guys can share equipment, you know, or just
Mhm.
trade ideas half the time, it's a big help.
Yeah, it's like finding that network of people.
Yes.
I mean, that's how I reached out to you.
Yeah, I
'Cause
remember.
I remember my brother. What do you guys do? I think you guys were recording like a video or something.
Oh, it was
Artist.
a photo shoot. Yeah, we were
Something
doing
like that.
a photo shoot with an artist that I had engineered for,
Mhm.
you know.
And I remember my brother's like, "Yo, you need to reach out to him." And I'm like, "All right."
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
I
shot you
remember.
that message, and I was like, "Dude, like in my house, I only had speakers and my laptop, and the audio interface, and my
Yeah.
mic, but."
Real similar to what I was starting with.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. It was just kind of like whatever I see on YouTube and
Yeah, and
whatever.
you know, whatever information I had, I passed on to you. And the cool thing is you actually went and used it and learned more about it and kept getting better. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, you and me are like this now, you know. Even though I started how many years before, right? You gained a bunch of knowledge super quick. And a big part of that, I'm sure, is having a network of people that you could just talk to,
Yeah.
you know, because that's the easiest way to learn.
Because I remember the first thing you taught me was like gain staging. I had no clue of what the hell, like with levels or anything. Like I just thought like you shouldn't hit the red. The vocals, I just kind of match it, so you see how loud it is, and you're like, no, just turn the beat down, record at a good level for vocals, and just
Everything can go up after that. Yeah. Yep. You know, I mean, healthy levels are definitely important. Gain staging, even though I know there's like several different ways people look at gain staging, every definition that you hear helps, you know? And when you see it in practice, it starts to make more sense, obviously, right? You saw me kind of use it and you're like, oh, I get it. That makes sense now.
Yeah.
But I think knowing the entire process helps you make informed decisions. Like, if you know the recording process, if you know the mixing process, and if you know the mastering process, even if you're not specialized in one of those or even two of those, you know, if you're only like doing the initial recording and then it's going to get sent off to the mixing engineer, then it's going to get sent off to the mastering engineer, it's nice to know beforehand what the mixer is going to want. If you know how to mix, then you know exactly what to send them, you know. Same thing for the mixing engineer. If he knows kind of a little bit about mastering, he'll know more of what the mastering engineer might want, or the format, the levels, things like that. So now my thought process in the recording is, okay, we're going to record it for the mixing, and we're going to mix it for the mastering, and we're going to master it for the release. You know, each piece kind of has its own phase, and a lot of people like to kind of
flip it. Yeah, because I've heard that where it's like record like it's not going to be mixed, mix it like it's not going to be mastered, and then just master it like it's not going to be released.
Exactly, and that's going along kind of the same lines there. You know, you just want to do the best of each process, so that way, in the end, it's better than the sum of the parts. You know.
Yeah, that's true. Because I know for you, like when you were first getting into it, did you know the difference between like this is what mastering does? This is what mixing does, or for you was it just like it's all one beat?
Oh, at the beginning, no. I mean, at the beginning, I think for every engineer, mastering is some secret process that no one knows about, you know, and it's like some crazy wizardry that only the elite engineers know about. But after a while, you start to kind of realize what it is. It's, you know, looking at things. Actually, you know what? I heard it best described recently. Mixing is looking zoomed in at the picture, catching all the little details. Mastering is finally zooming out and seeing the big picture.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you think about it like that, it makes a lot more sense, because mastering is, you know, it's mastering the entire track, whereas mixing is individual pieces. And if you kind of think of it that way as you're doing each process, it'll help. It really does.
Because in mastering, you boost the high end, you're boosting the high end, the hi-hats, the claps, or snare,
exactly,
vocals.
One adjustment is going to affect everything on that track, you know.
Yeah, that's true. And for example, like when it came to hardware versus plugins,
Mm-hmm.
when did you know, all right, I should probably get some hardware compared to plugins?
I think it's just curiosity. You know,
Yeah.
you see all these big old school guys that have an entire rack, an entire wall full of gear. You know,
Yeah.
and each one of those pieces is $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. You know, and you
Yeah.
think, how do you get there? And so you want to try it. You know, and I've got a couple small pieces, and I've had other pieces over the years that I've kind of cycled through.
Mm-hmm.
I never seem to have too much at a time, but it was just curiosity at first. And then the cool thing is now you know how to use hardware because you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, I think you might remember I used to have over here a big 48 channel mixer,
Yeah.
right? And I would use that to kind of sweeten things up before it went into the computer. From there, I gained a couple compressors and preamps where I could kind of change the combination of things. And in the end, I finally realized the cleanest sound that I was getting was with these couple components right here.
Mm-hmm.
A nice smooth preamp and a compressor, just not pushed too hard. And I get a nice clean tone going into the computer, but there's always more happening on the backside once it's in, you know? I use hardware now to just get a good signal coming in, and all my detailed work usually comes in from plugins, you know, where I can sit there and tweak for hours. And there's some people who don't like doing that. I totally get it. You get the good sound going in. That's part of what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just like to have a little bit more control when my ears have been in a rested environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what plugins kind of allow for.
Was it a big difference that you noticed when you started getting hardware? Or was it just like, this compressor did this much better, this preamp did a little bit more, or was it just like, once I got this compressor, that was it?
Well, I could definitely tell you the ones I was using before were the cheaper, lower end models. And it was good for getting a healthy level that wasn't spiking. But when I A and B'd, you know, just a better quality compressor versus the lower one, I noticed right away. It was just clearer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was really the big thing, is you didn't really notice it when you were recording because this just sounds better than the plain signal.
Yeah.
But then when you get another component that's better than the previous component, now you notice that signal is just nicer,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it depends, you know, because you could always just go in clean and use a good emulator or just a regular compressor on the plug-in side of things.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool that there's a million ways to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not stuck in one way, you can kind of take the advantages from all of them.
Yeah.
You know, I like hardware. I wish I had more money for it. You know, I have a lot more of it.
Yeah.
But I also like the freedom of plugins, the tweakability and the recall and things like that. When I use the compressor, I write down my settings, you know, for each artist usually, especially if I know it's going to be a long session where we'll do multiple tracks and things like that. We'll come back in for multiple days. I want to make sure I can recall everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only way to do that with hardware is write it down,
Yeah.
you know, or put it in a Word document or something.
Mm-hmm.
Plugins, you open it back up. Hey, it's
right
it's the same way it was before, or
Yeah.
you save a preset, you know, and that's a big help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's what I do. I mean, my setup is just mic, XLR into audio interface
Mm-hmm.
into my computer.
Yep.
And then I do everything like plugins.
And you know, I have no doubt, I'm sure the way things are going nowadays, you'll see like an old school like hardware compressor like that one that's got some sort of wizardry inside of it that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be able to recall settings, you know,
Yeah.
basically a little DSP inside of it that you can say this setting and you'll watch the knobs turn,
That's
you know,
pretty dope.
and I can picture that's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in a year now, you know.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the way things are going. Even there's a company I know of that has a kind of like a digital patch bay now,
Mm-hmm.
where all the routing is done digitally through the system. It's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the old school patch bays like I was kind of talking about before
Yeah.
you got here.
Like if you were to start over from zero in 2021, what would you do?
I'd invest in a good interface. I guess it kind of depends on what I'd be doing. If I was recording bands, I'd want an interface that has more inputs, you know. If I'm just doing a lot more hip hop and single instruments, I might just opt for one of the nicer 2-input interfaces. The Apollos are really nice. The Focusrites are really nice.
Yeah.
But it all kind of depends. If you're just trying to jump right into it, get the good stuff that'll enable you to start right away. The stuff that has built-in AD/DA converters and things like that. But, you know, now if I had a good chunk of money and I was going to invest in things properly, I'd look more into the good converters with a separate preamp, with a separate I/O, you know, input output. It's kind of hard to say. And then a good mic, good cables, you know, all those things that I overlooked at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, I opted out for the cheaper stuff because I could afford it.
Yeah.
I might save up a little more now and get something a little better each time.
What about like workflow tips or yeah, like I mean, you're gonna be in the studio. If you're learning, like me, when I was first learning, I'll spend like 5-6 hours of my day just sitting there on that computer, like this is how you do this, this is how you do that, and watch this video and try to recreate it.
Well, I think the biggest thing for workflow with me was kind of consolidating my setup time by saving templates. I would, when I feel like I got a good one down for an artist who's coming in, you know, I'll come in a half hour, an hour, 2 hours, depending early. I'll kind of gather the information of what they're going to be recording. You know, if it's a rap, like a rapper, I'll come in and set up a vocal track, a dub track, an ad-lib track, and then a couple of reverbs and delays and things like that, and then a beat track. And I'll have all that set up the way that I think they're going to want it, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully that's going to make it easier for me to record. If it goes smoothly, that's going to be my preset for the next time that artist comes in. And then I'll build off of that for other artists. If I know they like to come in and do 2 layers of dubs and panned, I'll already have those 2 layers of dubs, the tracks, ready and panned. So when it comes time, we just record on that one, record on that one.
Yeah. That's something I started doing. And it saves so much time. It saves like cool 25 minutes.
Exactly.
From having to set up everything, open up your program, and then just create all the tracks. If you already have the template, just boom.
And getting familiar with your software is a big part of that. You know, your DAW, getting familiar with your hardware, the way that your microphone's routed through, whether it's a preamp into an interface, whether it's just an interface, or if you're going through a preamp and converters interface, things like that. You know, it all kind of seems crazy at first until you do it, and then you get used to it. The best way to get a good workflow is get used to what you have.
Yeah. And what made you choose Pro Tools?
Yeah, I don't really know. That was really the software I knew of at the time. So that's what I decided to try. I liked it. I had worked with other softwares before, and this made sense to me. And I know people have a million different opinions on Pro Tools, Logic, Reaper, Studio One. I get it. They're all different. It's nice knowing how to work more than one, but Pro Tools has been the one that I've been the most comfortable with. And I use it now like it's an extension of my hand. You know, like I'm just this.
Like hotkeys and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I know for me, I chose Logic because it just felt right for me. Because I tried Reaper, I tried Reason, I tried Ableton before I even tried Logic. Yeah. And then I tried Logic and I'm like, so much simpler.
Yeah, this makes sense, right?
Yeah, this made a lot more sense, and it's just the workflow.
And back when I was producing, I was using FL Studio, and if you go from that to Pro Tools, things are night and day different, you know? And then I started producing in Pro Tools. Then I started kind of doing a hybrid of both. I used to do a lot of vinyl samples, and I liked the way that I was able to do that in FL. I'd record my vinyl sample in, I'd chop it up, bring it to the pads, and lay that down there. Then I'd bring it into Pro Tools, and I'd lay down the drums or the extra layers that I knew I'd be able to get recorded easily into that system. Yeah, I used to use FL as the production software and Pro Tools as the mixing / also production software, you know?
Yeah, so you just see a hybrid of both.
Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah, because I know for me, the reason I didn't choose Ableton was because I didn't understand it. I couldn't make a beat. I didn't know how to drag the sample in. And
I had tried Ableton too. I had a really tough time with it. But I know there's a lot of people that don't have a tough time with it. There's a lot of people that work it like it's, you know, the only thing that matters. And it's really cool. I wish I was a little more versed on other softwares. You know, I would like to be good at Logic. I would like to be good with Studio One. I can work those softwares.
Yeah, you'll figure it out. Like, once you know what to do, like, you kind of figure it out. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of similarities between them all, you know, but there's a lot of differences between them all too.
Yeah.
As a challenge, a friend of mine, another engineer, who does more home recordings and demos, he religiously uses GarageBand. You know, he's good at it. He's really good at GarageBand, and as a challenge, he recorded and mixed a band, and made it sound great. Then he gave me all of the stems, raw, and challenged me to mix it in GarageBand as well, and try to make it sound better. I don't know if I got past trying to parallel compress the drums, and I just said, forget this. I'm not doing this, you know, because it was hard. It was really hard. The workflow is a lot different than what I'm used to, and there's a lot of workarounds you kind of have to think of, you know, just like you would in any other DAW. You know, there's things that Pro Tools does differently than Logic, right? And you just have to know how to flip the script a little bit.
Yeah, because I know in Pro Tools, I think you showed me where you could cut out the pauses, like in between the dubs.
Oh,
that way, because in Logic, I'm manually chopping. I'm like, you know, going through each and every friggin' pause, and it's just cut, and it's just like, I know in Pro Tools it just does it automatic.
True, but the precision that you gain from doing the hand chop way, it's a really good learning experience. A buddy of mine, back when we were in early junior college years, he was working at a studio just kind of learning, you know, and what his mentor was teaching him was, hey, I want you to go in, they were also on Pro Tools, I want you to go into these couple vocal tracks and cut all the silences out. Didn't show him the hotkey, didn't show him the shortcut, and got him used to manually cutting. Later he figured out how to do it because I was doing the easier way. Goes back to his teacher and says, why did you have me do this? He said, because I want you to get used to manually doing it. It's not always going to be this way, you know? Later on, he taught him how to use the Command U on Pro Tools, you know, strip silence, and how to tweak the parameters enough to where it sounds natural. You know, because there's a lot of the times it can come out and like cut a breath just a little weird, too much, you know?
Like there's just that sudden stop on that vocal.
Exactly. Or a sudden come in halfway through a breath. Things like that. So it taught him how to get around that in any software. You go in and cut things manually.
Do you think it's a process? Like for example, me, when I started, I wanted the best equipment, but in reality, I wasn't ready for it. Because what's the point of having it if I didn't even know how to use it?
That's a good point. And that's one of the beauties of plugins, especially the emulator plugins that copy an old school, like an old UA compressor, you know? Just the big two knobs and a couple buttons. You learn how to make that react on the plugin side of things because you have all the tweakability. Then once you get a hardware version of it, you're not lost. You know what things are going to change the sound, and you'll know how it's going to react when you turn this knob this way. You know, so in that sense, the plugins are a really good teacher for what you had said. What's the point of getting hardware if you don't know how to use it? But part of the beauty is getting something you don't know how to use and learning how to use it, you know? When I had that big mixer, I had no clue how to get the audio routed the way that I wanted it to. And it took a lot of trial and error just on my own, recording myself, trying to get it to go through the the several different layers on the mixer I wanted.
Yeah.
And finally, it got to the point where it was like, okay, I could send the audio out from the computer that's already been recorded,
Mm-hmm.
tweak it on the mixer, and send it back into the computer tweaked,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with the way I wanted it. And that was kind of nice when I figured out how to do that, but I had to go through the process of figuring it out,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I know not everybody's as savvy in, you know, tech savvy or routing savvy, but it helps you build that when you're just going through the motions of a new hardware or
Yeah.
something on your own.
Because even with me, when you taught me like routing, when I would help you set up that sound,
Mm-hmm.
like just the fact that you had to run the snake into the speakers, and then each one was going into the mix board, and it's kind of like,
And they're separate, right?
Mhm.
And your control is separate. Yeah. Live sound helped me a ton. Like being in the situation of a live sound concert, even a speaking seminar, something where they're having like a speaker up front. Anything can happen at any time, and you have to kind of know how to fix it, you know? And it really gives you an ear for what your adjustments on the board will be doing. Well, those adjustments on the board will all translate into your EQ or your compressor or whatever it may be on here, your reverb. But learning the routing on an analog board is really nice because it shows you exactly what's happening on the computer side of things when you're routing. You know, it just kind of shows you more of the physical aspect, whereas this is it's invisible. You just have to know what things are named, you know. But yeah, live sound was when it was happening, you know, because it hasn't been around for a while, but it was really fun, and it was always a big eye-opener for what's happening on this side of things.
Yeah. Like, other sources of incomes do you do instead of like, because I mean, at the end of the day, everybody wants to do this for a living, right? Like, everybody wants to make money to be able to do this full time.
Yeah.
But to do it full time, you need to have a certain like standard. You need to have certain equipment. You need to know what you're doing.
Yep.
You know.
Well, currently.
Yeah. Currently and before, like, what were some of the things you would do to like rack up some money to invest?
Kind of fund the habit.
Yeah.
Well, starting out, I didn't really have a job because I was young, going to school. But at that point, I was starting to get pretty good at the recording part. So I would record for, like I had mentioned, $20 a song, 25 at first, and just depending on what I was recording.
Yeah.
People from school, usually. And then, you know, got a little bit more in depth with things, and then I got a job. You know, once I got a job, it was nice because I was able to start affording better interfaces, better mics, and things like that. I was working at Pizza Hut at the time, also doing tutoring on the side. But as we had mentioned, when the equipment and the knowledge gets better, because I was recording more and more, even though I had a job, and at different places.
Yeah.
I was able to get more money, get more knowledge, get better equipment, therefore charge a little more, build the space up that I was in. I had a home studio, and I had it in one bedroom of the house, and I remember the room was blue, right? Just this whole blue color. And even then, that's when I got the big mixer in there. And if you look at pictures of the home studio, it kind of is like, oh, wow, yeah, that looks pretty cool. In fact, it's very similar to what we have in here already, you know? I moved it to a bigger room of the house, and then I realized, okay, I need to get this out of the house. And at that point, I was teaching music as well. So teaching, recording more, producing more, it was all helping to kind of fund what was happening. And then I finally got this place, which, you know, I got a really good deal renting it out. They were okay with me putting another wall up so I could split it into 2 rooms. And it's, like I had mentioned, a home away from home.
Yeah.
So this kind of sustains itself, you know. Not a huge amount of profit from this because COVID especially.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of people in here lately, but I'd get mixing jobs, I get mastering jobs, I get just demo recordings, and I get the full shebang sometimes too.
Yeah.
But all of those add up to keeping the dream alive, really, because this is really what I want to do.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, I still have a regular job, you know, somewhere in the tech industry in the Bay Area. And when I come home, I still teach music. I still work in the studio. I still, produce, not in the sense of like rap beats anymore, but podcast intros, background music, and things like that. You just try to do whatever you can that keeps it alive for you, and mixing it up with different sources of musical income. It's nice. It starts rounding you out a little bit more too.
Yeah, there's always just finding what you could do.
Yeah.
Does that mean, like, for example, it doesn't always have to be recording music. Like how you said, you could do podcasts. You could.
I have a regular podcaster that comes in. We do episodes pretty often. I have a voiceover guy occasionally, where he'll just come lay down on, something kind of like, I don't know what they usually are, if they're commercials or if they're just kind of in between things for radio podcasts or things like that. But yeah, just having a variety is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it teaches you more and more things every time you do each, piece.
Yeah. So you recording would be your ultimate full-time thing. Like, if you could just wake up, record every day, and engineer, that's what you're going for?
Yep, that's what I would love to do. Whether or not it'll happen, you just got to stick with it long enough. But I also do enjoy the 9 to 5 that I have too. If I can balance them both and still have a good studio and maybe even have another engineer that I work with, I can outsource the work to, or have him record at the studio, that would be really ideal.
Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah, I mean, living the dream, right?
Yeah. And do you smoke when you record?
Well, when I record, sometimes, not usually. In the mixing process, usually, because it's by myself, I'll kind of do that. I try to limit it to an extent, try not to get too up there.
Yeah.
I've noticed that my tweaks will be different, or even under the influence of alcohol, like every engineer says, like, you can do these things, but it should be in moderation. Yeah. And I agree with that,
Yeah, me too.
But I will say, if the song or project that you're working on is kind of meant to be in that headspace, if it's a real trippy song, or if it's a real spacey sort of a musical experience, then you can kind of get away with smoking a bunch and kind of vibing out to it, But at the same time, everyone's different. Some people can smoke a whole lot, do a whole project for the entire day, and it comes out great. Some people, you can hear the difference night and day between smoking and not smoking. Yeah. You did this mix while you were smoking or drinking, So it's really dependent on the person, but it does affect your ears. So it's something to keep in mind.
Do you feel like it helps you mix?
Sometimes it helps me get past a tough decision, move forward with a little bit more ease. But at the same time, there are times when it makes me overthink, so, and I'll stay stuck on a decision for too long. So it's always situational. It's never like a cookie cutter experience, whether I'm smoking or not smoking. There's so many factors. Sometimes being too cold in the studio is a factor, It's making me think differently because I want to get out of here.
Or, you're like shaking.
Yep. I like to keep the heater turned off if we're recording, And if it's, or the heater, air conditioner, whichever. And if it's hot outside, the air conditioner's not on, guess what? It gets hot in here. And if it's cold outside and the heater's not on, it gets cold in here. So that'll, sometimes if it gets to those extremes, it'll affect my decisions, whether we're trying to decide on a take, or trying to decide if we need to redo pieces, Every factor comes into play. So smoking is just another factor,
Because I know for me, like, there'll be times where I get high, and then I'm like, I'm gonna use this plugin. I haven't used this plugin in a while. And then I go on this like whole creative little thing, like tweaking stuff, and I'm like, it sounds good, but I probably wasted like 35 minutes.
Yes, and that, that can go both ways too. Like, maybe it sounds better than your regular way of doing things because you're thinking in a different manner. Yeah. But then, like you said, maybe it just wasted time to sound worse. Yeah. As long as it's a learning experience, though, it's not a waste of time. Now don't do it that way. Yeah. Right? Now you know, maybe you tweak your regular method, or you keep using your regular method, or you can try a whole nother one. You know, the options are endless. And that's one of the cool things about not just engineering, producing, but just music in general. You know, that's my favorite part about this whole thing, is the music side. Podcasting is cool, voiceovers are cool, even making background noises and soundscapes, that's cool, but I enjoy music more than any of it.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
because it all goes down to the music. It's all like the art of being able to say like, damn, I did this song.
Yeah.
Or even just like looking, for example, like there's a song I did and it had like 50K views, 80K views.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's 80,000 people that heard this song that I mixed.
And it's crazy to think about, right?
And I think about like, damn, dude, this kind of sucks.
Oh, well.
Like looking, because I mean, I did that song years ago.
Yep.
You know?
And so it's your old mixing style, and you don't like it anymore. Yeah, I got a ton of those. God.
Yeah,
I think every engineer goes through that. Every musician goes through that. You know.
But it's still cool knowing 80,000 people.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely super fun.
Because like they're not hearing what I'm hearing. They're hearing a full, complete song. Like, oh, this song is good.
Yep.
You know, but me, or as an engineer, and you look at it in an engineering way, it's kind of like, damn.
It's hard to imagine what most of the world is going to hear the song like, you know, because we've trained our ears and our, you know, kind of reactions to make things sound better and listen for imperfections that we can fix, you know. Most people don't listen to music like that. They listen to it and they get the whole experience. Like I said, zoomed out, you know. Yeah. Most of the time we're zooming in even on a picture that's 2-3 years old. So
it's finding like, how can I do it better?
Because it's nice to be able to go back and listen to your stuff and think of how you can improve it, because it does help you with your next projects, you know. I've never gone back and remixed one of my older songs, like from a group or a rapper, but it's something that I'm really open to doing, and I'm thinking I probably should try doing that one day, because you can always fix mistakes like that through a DAW, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, I think you're the one that told me, it's like, as long as you have that good, clean recording, you could remix it.
Yep.
But if you have like pops, or if you have, you know, when someone bumps into the mic, you can't remove that.
Yep.
Once it's down, it's down.
Exactly.
So getting that first vocal take, a clean one.
It's important.
Right, yeah.
It's very important.
What would be some advice you were to give people who are first starting off or in the beginning stages?
Well, like I had kind of mentioned, learn your DAW, learn your hardware, learn whatever it is you have already, and learn how to use it well. Get the bare essentials if that's what you can afford, you know, everything that you'll need, interface, mic, cables, maybe a little bit of sound material if you can, good set of headphones or speakers, and then just learn videos, reading, and get good at what you have. Everything else will come after. As long as you can do that, you're already more than halfway, 90% of the way there pretty much, you know. Everything else is just going to come from experience. So kickstarting that with the learning, it's a good way to do it.
Well, that's about it.
Well,
thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Your information with everybody.
Yeah, no problem. Well, bye.